Recording in progress.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight inshallah we're going to study a couple of very interesting chapters of the chapter of fasting. So we're going to study the chapters on the makruhat of fasting and the sunnah of fasting. But before we start with that, we just want to mention two masail from the last dars. There we spoke on mani and madi coming out of the body, and we spoke of the things that would break the fast when mani comes out, or when madi comes out, and the things that would not break the fast. There were one thing I forgot to specify, and that is masturbation. Masturbation would break the fast if mani comes out. Masturbation it would break the fast if mani comes out. And if madi comes out, because it's touching is involved, so touching of the body or the skin, so therefore it will break the fast. The other thing from the contemporary masail that I want to mention is a lady taking a pill to stop her haidh. What's the ruling on that? So the fuqaha touch on this mas'ala, and they say that it's permissible for a lady to take the pill to stop her haidh, provided there's no harm on her. So who decides the harm? We spoke that it's the doctor, and we spoke on the Muslim doctor and the ruling on a non-Muslim doctor. So for a lady to take a pill to stop haidh, permissible. For a lady to take a pill to cause haidh, permissible. An example of a lady taking a pill to cause haidh is a lady who's, let's say, in her iddah, and then her iddah stopped. Her iddah stopped for some reason. She's doing iddah through 3 haidh cycles, and then haidh stopped, therefore it would prolong. Iddah would prolong. So here it's permissible for her to take a pill to cause her haidh to come back, and then she can complete her iddah. So the Shafi'i madhab say that a lady should not take a pill for her haidh to come. They say it's because when a lady is in haidh, she doesn't have to perform salah and fast and those things, basically taklif. So it's basically rushing the taklif. They say except for two people, and that is a girl that is not reached 15 yet. She's not reached 15. She can take a pill to cause her haidh to come, number one. And number two, it is for a lady who's in iddah, as we mentioned, to the haidh to come, so that she can finish her iddah. So those two things we wanted to touch on, and then we're going to start the chapter on those makruhat of fasting, and they say وَمَا يُسْتَحَبْ, and there's things that are sunnah and mustahab for fasting, وَفِي الصَّوْمِ وَحُكْمِ الْقَضَاء. And they also mention in this chapter, they say حُكْمِ الْقَضَاء, but they don't touch on the hukm, the ruling of qada. They speak on rules connected to qada when qada is already there. And others phrase the chapter is the chapter of adab al-siyam, the etiquettes of fasting. So we say hukm al-qada. Now we'll touch on this a bit later, but let's just mention the mas'ala now. We spoke on a few times the categories of a person who has to do qada, first categories who have to do kaffarah, etc. For kaffarah, we're going to mention a mas'ala. We're going to mention two masail. So the first one is, can qada be done on behalf of somebody else, either when the person is alive or when the person has passed away? So when the person is alive, he's not able to fast, either because he's too old or he's ill. In this case, you're not allowed to do qada on behalf of that person, because you feed. The person will feed. Can somebody else feed on his behalf? Because we spoke about how much to feed and who to feed. The answer would be yes, a person can feed on somebody else's behalf, but as long as that person's permission is been granted, because it's something wajib on that person, so it cannot be done without his knowledge. Like zakah, you want to give zakah on behalf of somebody else, you can't just go without them knowing. They have to give you permission, because it's an ibadah that needs intention. So intention cannot be your intention, but it's the ibadah of somebody else. So that's why it needs intention. So you have to get the person's permission. Same thing with zakatul fitr. We inshallah, in fact, I'll add a dars inshallah of zakatul fitr, because it connects to Ramadan. Then we'll discuss these masail. So then you can pay the money or feed on behalf of somebody else with the permission, but you cannot fast. Why? You cannot fast qadha for the person while he's alive or when he's dead or when he passes away. This refers to qadha fasting or fasting of kaffarah. Fasting of kaffarah, you cannot do so. And that is because these things are obligatory from the Sharia itself. Why we mention this? Because it's going to come later, and that is a nadhr, a vow. A person takes a vow on himself. I vow if Allah cures me, I'll fast 3 days, for example. So this, you've made it obligatory on yourself. So this case, somebody else can do it on your behalf. We're going to discuss why and the ahadith and what's the meaning of nadhr. Sheikh Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi explains this very nicely. So we'll touch on it a bit later, inshallah, maybe the next, maybe in a future dars when we do these things. So the nadhr you can, but the qadha and kaffarah you cannot, because it's from the Sharia itself. Allah has made it obligatory. And then if a person is too old, or old is going to be a clear reason, but a person is ill, he's too ill to fast. He's too ill to fast, so he feels he's never going to get cured. Or the doctors say you most likely won't get cured. So then and he's not allowed to fast, so then he feeds. And then if he gets cured, if he's now able to fast, either he fed already or he didn't feed already. So what would the ruling be? Because now he's able to fast. So here the fuqaha differ on this mas'ala. So the Hanafi madhab say that he'd have to fast. The fidyah that he paid, we call it kaffarah fidyah, they can imply the same thing in certain cases. So that would mean for a person who did the kaffarah, he has to fast in the Hanafi madhab. The Hanbali madhab, they have a balanced opinion. And they say if a person already gave the fidyah, the kaffarah for the fast that he thought he'd never be able to keep, then that would count. If he hasn't done it, if he hasn't given the kaffarah / the fidyah, then in this case he has to fast. And the Shafi'i madhab say whether he gave it or not, whether he gave the fidyah or the kaffarah or not, what's obligatory on him is the kaffarah. So he still has to give just the kaffarah, no fasting. Now, in fact, before this chapter, there's actually a chapter where the fuqaha speak on the kaffarah for a person who has intercourse in the day in Ramadan. So I'm not going to go through the entire chapter. We'll just touch on a few masail and then we'll go into the main chapter. If somebody wants to go through this whole chapter, because there's actually a number of interesting masail the fuqaha mention in this chapter of a person who has intercourse in the day of Ramadan. I won't touch on many of them now, a couple, but then at another time, inshallah, we can actually have a dars for it. One of the things that I'll mention, maybe 3 or 4 things from here, and that is that intercourse in the day in Ramadan, it will only cause the kaffarah. Kaffarah is only for intercourse. This kaffarah, freeing a slave or fasting 2 months or feeding 60 people. Feeding 60 people, the amount that we mentioned before, that's the standard amount for all the kaffarah. Standard amount for all the kaffarah. We mentioned it in previous durus. This is the major kaffarah. Those 3 things I mentioned, they are according to sequence. If you can free a slave, you free a slave. If not, you have to fast. If not, then you feed. And we said in this case, the mashhur of the madhab is that if a person cannot afford to feed, if he cannot afford to feed 60 people, then this kaffarah falls. The second opinion in the madhab, they actually discuss whether a person can, they don't have, so somebody else is giving the kaffarah on their behalf, or they're so poor they have just enough. Can they use it themselves? This is the second opinion. They discuss these things, but let's not go into those things. So a couple of things else connected to this mas'ala, that is intercourse in the front or back private part. Intercourse in the front or back private part would necessitate the kaffarah. And that is most of the fiqh rules that connect to intercourse, they refer to front and back. And it refers to penetration. So anything before penetration, they say taghyib al-hashafa. So that means that the tip of the penis, so they taghyib al-hashafa, the hashafa is that part that the skin that you circumcise, that's on top of the private part. Just before that is the tip of the private part. When you say tip, we don't just mean like this part, but that whole part until where the foreskin would have been. So that whole part, that must go inside. Right? So just like the actual tip will not necessitate kaffarah, will not necessitate ghusl, none of those things, will not necessitate the haidh, none of those things. But once it goes in more to where we said taghyib al-hashafa, what we explained is the hashafa, that tip which is a bit more until where the foreskin would actually be. If there were foreskin and the person was not circumcised, that would count as now the kaffarah would, or the haidh would happen. So we said front or back private part, and we said it must be penetration in this case. So now that is connected to most masail, but some masail only the front private part. Like what? Ihsan. Ihsan is when there's a few stipulations to it, but when a person is married and then they have intercourse, they're married or after marriage. If they were to commit zina, then the penalty would be more severe than somebody who's still a virgin. And what would constitute a person becoming what they call a muhsan is only penetration in the front part. Penetration in the back part is haram, right? But it will still constitute the kaffarah or most other rules, except for ihsan. Another thing connected to it, and that is if a person has intercourse forgetfully. In the Hanbali madhab, not in Hanafi, not in Shafi'i, if a person has intercourse forgetfully, forgetting that it's Ramadan, or forgetting his fasting, then in this case, in the Hanbali madhab, there'll still be kaffarah. So forgetfulness is not an excuse. So generally the qaida is, and this is a qaida a person can take throughout fiqh, and that is an-nisyan. The nisyan, forgetfulness. Forgetfulness makes something that's present absent. It does not make something that was absent present. So we said something that is present, it will make it absent. We said, let's use the example of fasting. You ate forgetfully. You're supposed to not eat, but you ate forgetfully. So the eating is something that is present. So nisyan, forgetfulness, makes the present absent. So it was as if you didn't eat and your fast will be valid. Another example, but the fuqaha differ in this mas'ala, but a person forgot he had impurity on his clothes. He knew he had impurity on his clothes. Then he forgot and he prayed salah. After salah he realized. So we said forgetfulness makes the present, in this case the impurity, it will make it absent. So it was as if he prayed without impurity and his salah would be valid. This is the second opinion in the Hanbali madhab. The relied upon position in the madhab is that forgetfulness is not an excuse here, and they look at it from a different angle. But forgetfulness does not make the absent present. So if a person forgot to say the opening takbir of salah, opening takbir is now absent. It doesn't make it present. It doesn't make it present. But in this case of fasting, in this case of intercourse in the day of Ramadan, forgetfulness would not make the kaffarah not fall. And this is not the Shafi'i opinion in Hanafi, it's Hanbali. And they say because it has itlaaf, it is you breaking something. And when you break something, then you don't need to have intention. You don't need to have intention. You can do it forgetfully, by mistake, ignorantly, it would count. So if, let's say, a child has no intention, let's say he's 5 years old, he threw a stone and he broke your car window. So this child has no intention. Do you say that the guardian of the child does not have to pay you back for your window because the child has no intention, he did it without intention? You'd say no. You'd say no. No sin on the child, no sin on the person who had intercourse forgetfully, but the kaffarah is there, the penalty is there, the dhaman is still there. Dhaman is still there. Okay, and then what about, no, let's not go in, there's a few things in there, there's a few things they mention interestingly. Okay. And then they mention, last thing I'm going to mention in this chapter, and that is a person has to fast 2 months. How do we count the months of Sharia? How do we count the months in Islam? We know we work with the lunar calendar, but how do we count, in this case, 2 months? Or how do we count a lady who's having iddah? A lady who's having iddah, she's sitting 4 months and 10 days. The iddah of her husband who passed away, 4 months and 10 days. Or a lady who does not have haidh and she has to sit iddah for 3 months. So when we have to count with months, how do we count with months in Islam for this kind of a person? So we're going to mention, let's say there's around three opinions or 4. So we're going to mention the first opinion, which is the Hanbali and Hanafi. The Hanbali and Hanafi. But in this first scenario, all the madhab, they're going to equal the same thing. So however we phrase it, the answer is going to be for the first scenario the same. And that is, they say if a person, let's use iddah as an example, right? The 4 months, 10 days. A lady's husband passed away on the first of an Islamic month. So let's use Muharram. So the first of the Islamic month, let's say 10 a.m. he passed away. Now in iddah, you go by the minute. So 4 months, 10 days, at 10 a.m. she's out of iddah. So at 10:01 she can, now the rules do not apply to her iddah, right? So that's one thing to remember on when you look at like iddah. Of course, fasting would be to the end of the day, because you have to fast the whole day until 60 days are completed. If that's a kaffarah. If kaffarah is 10 days, then 10 days. Okay, so with 10 days you don't have to count the months, right? So this doesn't have an issue. But when it has to do with months, the fuqaha say if the person passed away on the first of an Islamic month, Then from there, you just count directly 4 months, add 10 days. It doesn't matter if the months were 30 days or 29 days, that has no rule. You just fast 1, 2, 3, 4 months. So Muharram, Safar, Rabi' al-Awwal, Rabi' al-Thani, Jumad al-Ula, the 10th of Jumad al-Ula, at the time when the husband passed away, then she will be out of iddah. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, all the fuqaha would go with this. So here where there's a difference of opinion is when a person passed away, when the man passed away in the middle of a month, or if a person starts his fasts in the middle of a month. When he starts his fast in the beginning of the month, he's going to fast, let's say Muharram, Safar, end of Safar, that's the end. If it's 29 days, he ends. If it's 30 days, he's got to fast the 30th day, and first of the third month, his fasts are over, right? So now when he fasts, starting his fast in the middle of the month, or she's starting her iddah in the middle of the month, then in the Hanbali and Hanafi madhab, the relied upon position of the Hanbali madhab, they say here you count 60 days. Here you count 60 days. So you deem each 60 days for 2 month fasting, but 130 days for iddah, which means you count each month as if it is 30 days. As if it is 30 days. Right? So you count 130 days. After 130 days, the iddah will end. The second opinion in the Hanbali madhab, and this is with the Shafi'i and Maliki madhab, they say, okay, so this can be a bit tricky. So let's just try and explain this well. So they say, let's use 10th of Muharram, the person passed away. The man passed away. Or 10th of Muharram, the fasts start. So they're going to say, you're going to fast that first month, the end of Muharram, right? So let's keep that to the side for now. Then you're going to fast Safar, Rabi' al-Awwal, Rabi' al-Thani. 3 months. You fasted 3 months, right? You fasted a bit of that first month. So 3 months. This is going to be, the first one is going to be your 4th month. And then you fast 10 days, right? You fast 10 days. So then how do you calculate how many days you fast for the remainder of the first month to complete the 4th month? Because you've already fasted 3 full lunar months and 10 days. But you fasted a portion of the 4th month, which is your first month. And then, now after those 10 days, how do you complete this first month? So here there's 2 ways the fuqaha mention. The fuqaha mention either you deem that first month 30 days. Either you deem it 30 days. That means if you fasted from the 10th, or your iddah started on the 10th day, that means you're going to fast the rest of the month, or iddah of the rest of the month, that means 20 days. And then, so you fasted 20, so you're going to count it 30, right? So you have 10 remaining. So you're going to fast 1, 2, 3 months, your 10 days, and then the last 10 days to make up for 10 days that you've not fasted in the first month. And the other way is that you look at that first month. How many days was it? If it was 29 days or 30 days. If it was 30 days, that first month, Islamic month was 30, then you do it the exact way I explained just now. If it was 29 days, then you fasted 1, 2, 3 months, 10 days, and the last 10 days, so 10 days, and then 10 days, and that means you have 19 days left. You have 19 days left, so then you're going to fast 19 more days after those 10 days, not fast, sorry, iddah, because we're saying 4 months, 10 days, iddah of another 19 days. After 19 days, that's going to equal the 29th of that month. 29th of the month, would that be right? That's right. Because, or it will be the 10th. You say you start on the 10th, so that means you have 20 days. So I was counting on the 20th. So that means you fast 20 days, right? 20 days, because you start on the 10th. The iddah was 20 days. 10th day, the person passed away. So 20 days, that means out of 29, there's 9 days left. So then on the 19th of the 4th or the 5th month, 19th of the 5th month, the iddah will end. Or if he fasted, that means he'll fast 1 month, right? And then he's fasted from the 10th to the end of the Islamic month. That will be 19, or it will be 20 days. And if you're counting 30 this month should be, you just calculate how many days you fasted short of 30, and you fast that amount in the 3rd month. Or you'd look at how many short of 29. And then you'd fast it there. Those are how you calculate it. Inshallah, that is clear. And let's leave questions for the end of the dars. If something is not clear to understand, then we can explain it in the moment. But otherwise, questions further after the dars. So now we're going to start this chapter of the things that are makruh in fasting. So the fuqaha say, وَيُكْرَهُ لِلصَّائِمِ جَمْعُ رِيقِهِ فَيَبْتَلِعُهُ لِلْخُرُوجِ مِنْ خِلَافِ مَنْ قَالَ بِفِطْرِهِ. So the fuqaha say, first of all, they say it's makruh for a fasting person to gather his spit in his mouth and then to swallow it. It's makruh for him to gather his spit in his mouth, to build it up, let it accumulate, and then swallow it. The reason for that is because they say just to get out of the difference of opinion, and they say the Hanafi madhab has this opinion that if you then gather your spit and swallow it, it will break your fast. So they say this is makruh. Why? Why? Because of the difference of opinion. So now the fuqaha, especially the Hanbali fuqaha, they mention a mas'ala of having a rule to get out of the difference of opinion. So some of the fuqaha in qawaid, they say وَالْخُرُوجُ مِنَ الْخِلَافِ يُنْدَبْ. It's mandub, it's recommended in mustahab to do something that gets you out of the difference of opinion. So if some fuqaha say this thing is wajib and others say it is mubah, it is mustahab, a person should do it out of it being mustahab, right? Or if it's someone says mubah and someone says haram, then for a person to not do it would be safer. But to use this as an evidence to get out of the difference of opinion, it's one of the weakest forms of evidences. Min ad'af al-adilla. And then this mas'ala of going out of actually Imam Suyuti in Ashbah al-Nadha'ir mentions a few more masail connected to this, and somebody who wants to read up further, he has a few pages on it. He mentions a couple more principles connected to this which are very interesting. So this mas'ala of khurooj min al-khilaaf, the Hanbali madhab do it quite a lot, as we've maybe I've not mentioned it, we've come across a few masail, and maybe as we come across still, they use it a lot. So because someone says it breaks the fast, they deem it not to break the fast, but they say makruh. Why? Because of the difference of opinion. So this is for an alim. They say قبل العمل and بعد العمل. قبل العمل, before doing an action, then an alim uses the khurooj min al-khilaaf to get out of the difference of opinion as in evidence. So if someone says wajib and he believes it is mubah, it's permissible to do, not wajib, he says it's mustahab. Why? Because of the difference of opinion, and he wants to have safety in this mas'ala. So somebody would try and do it still. They wouldn't leave it out as the alim thinks, but because others say it's wajib, the alim recommends it. And then this ba'd al-amal is for the qadi and for the mufti. After doing an action, after a person has found himself in a difficult situation, let's say a person is poor, he doesn't have money to give zakah on, let's say, gold and silver, and he's on the Hanafi madhab. So in this case, an alim could give him a fatwa on another opinion to make it easier for him after action. And with one of the stipulations they say is that the difference of opinion must be strong. It must be a decent, valid difference of opinion. So in the Hanbali madhab, this would be makruh, but it would not break the fast. It would not break the fast. Then they mention the mas'ala of swallowing phlegm. They call it nukhama and nukhara. So one is from the nose down, you get phlegm. It's got like a body in it, right? We know it's phlegm. And the other one is from the chest. If those things come to the mouth, what we said is deemed outside. We explained it last time. If it comes to the mouth and a person swallows it, then it breaks the fast. Nukhama and nukhara, phlegm from the mouth and from the nose. Just to go back to the previous mas'ala, the mas'ala of spit, the Hanbali madhab say it does not break the fast. It does not break the fast because spit comes from the mouth itself. It comes from inside of the body itself. So it's like part of the body, part of the mouth. So that's why if a person, even though he were to gather it up, accumulate it and swallow it, it would not break the fast because it's not something from the outside. And leading to that, they say if a person's mouth becomes impure with some najasa, like what? Like vomit or like blood. Because blood is not, it's from inside, yes, but it's not like kind of from the mouth like saliva is. Right? Blood, vomit. If a person were to get it into his mouth and it came to what we described as the outside, and he voluntarily, knowing what he's doing, we said if it just happens by mistake, or somebody not realizing what he's doing, or forgetfully, it does not break the fast. We mentioned those things last time. It's important to remember that as we mention these masail, because sometimes I might not mention it because I've forgotten it, but somebody might think, but what if this happened unintentionally? So then instead of asking me, just remember what we explained last time. And that it would not break the fast. So if a person then had impurity in his mouth, and then he swallowed it intentionally, it will break the fast. Okay, so then the fuqaha say, let's say he spat it out, and then there were remainder in his mouth, or he gargled his mouth, but there was remainder in his mouth, and then he swallowed. Then they say that the remainder in his mouth, if he's able to distinguish it, and he swallowed it, it breaks the fast. If he was not able to distinguish it and be sure that he swallowed it, two things, then It would not break the fast. And again, I mentioned this here, distinguishing it, etc. But in reality, we mentioned it last time and said of something being in the mouth of food, if it's in the teeth or something, and somebody swallowed it, because he couldn't differentiate it distinguish it in his spit, it does not break the fast. So we mention it here, but in reality, a number of these things, the masail intertwine and they connect. So a person, a faqih, somebody who has understanding in fiqh, he'd connect these masail. So before a question, what if I don't intend? The answer was answered last time. We answered last time. Oh, what if I don't feel it, or this or that? It will not break the fast. But why? A person who studies this should know, because it was studied the last time. The fuqaha do not need to repeat it all the time. Then they speak of something from the outside coming on the inside. Something from the outside. So they say if a person puts a stone in his mouth, or let's say miswaak even, or we'll touch on toothbrush just now, or a string. So what they say is that not just putting it in the mouth, but it was in the mouth, and then they took it out and put it in again, or they just put it in the mouth, but it had lots of saliva in it. So now we mentioned saliva specifically because saliva, we said, does not break the fast if you swallow it. Obviously, if you swallow it normally, but if you gather the spit even, because it's from the inside, so that would mean min bab awla, they say, if let's say it was wet with water or something and then you put it in your mouth. So what we speak about here is that it has moisture on it, moisture from spit, but it's from the outside. You did miswaak and then there was moisture and you took it out and then you put it back in again and then you sucked in the moisture, or you had a stone, you just, you had it in your mouth and then you took it out, right? And then there was moisture, lots of a decent amount of spit on it, and then you put it back and then you swallowed that spit. Here the fuqaha say it would break the fast. So from spit, we mentioned spit because, as I said, it's from the inside, it's from the body, it's from the mouth. So that means if there's water or some liquid or something moisture on it, then obviously it will break the fast because that's not even from the body in the first place. And then they mentioned, even they say to the extent where if a person takes saliva and they put it to the outside of the mouth, they say by the lips, and then you have to suck it in again and then swallow, then it will break the fast, because they say you can avoid this. And this, number one, you can avoid it because it's here, there's no need to put it back in. Again, obviously it must be you're conscious of what you're doing, not let's say out of habit, you don't realize, like somebody bites their nails, for example. They bite their nail, but they don't realize because it's out of habit. So you bite your nail, you swallow it, right? You swallow it, then you don't break your fast because you're not consciously doing it. Now for nukhama and nukhara, the fuqaha say that it breaks the fast for a person, this phlegm. But they say for a non-fasting person even, breaks the fast if you swallow it, right? A non-fasting person, it's makrooh to swallow it because they deem it from istiqdar. And this we study further, inshallah, and then when you study the chapter of at'imah, of foods and what's halal and not halal. When they mention of things that are halal and not halal, then they mention things that are like disgusting, things that are disgusting or disgusting to certain people. Now this is a principle, a mas'ala that many differ, because what is disgusting? People would differ. One culture is used to eating something, the other ones would find it disgusting. So they don't deem it too accurate a principle to use. But it would, they say, because it's something disgusting, the same makrooh for a non-fasting person, to swallow. Okay, then very interesting few masail we're going to mention here, and that is, let's go through, let's just start it like this. Okay, so firstly, the fuqaha say, putting something in your mouth, whether it's food, whether it's edible or not, just putting it in your mouth does not break the fast. It does not break the fast. So even if you were to, let's say, you put something edible, you took a piece of a fruit, for example, you put it in your mouth, on your tongue. Would it break the fast just doing that? It would not. Yet alone if it is not edible, right? So that's a starting point. Why? Because, for example, we put something at least 3, 4, 2, 3, 5 times a day in our mouth that is usually taken as a drink, and that is water. We gargle our mouth in wudu. So because we put something in our mouth that is usually drunk, and the fuqaha say that merely putting something in your mouth would not break the fast, right? But they say that if this thing is put in the mouth for no reason, right, then what would the rule be? It's put into the mouth, not yet throat and swallow. It's put into the mouth. What would the rule be? So they say if there's a need for it, then a need like what? Like there's a need to taste the food for the husband who's maybe difficult. There's a need to taste the food. Or Ibn Abbas says even to buy something, you want to taste something to make a purchase. Or to chew food for your child. They mention that specifically. These things are a need. Then what's the ruling on that? Doing that when there's a need? Some fuqaha say it is makrooh and others say it's not makrooh. It's not makrooh. It's makrooh. Why? Because it could lead to swallowing. So they say don't do it. So we give the rule of makrooh. Others say there's a need, so the makrooh goes, because the principle says al-karaha tantafi, al-karaha tazul bil-haja. If there's a need for something, then the rule of makrooh goes away. And if there's a necessity to do something, then the rule of haram goes away. But what is necessity and what is a need, that's a deeper mas'ala on its own. So that's the second point of putting something in your mouth, if there's a need and if there's no need. Okay. Then, so we said something that generally you swallow, like food, you're tasting food, or needing to purchase, so you taste, or chewing for your child, to feed your child, something like that. So Ibn Qadi Abu Ya'la says that there's no problem in doing that. It's not even makruh. But if something that would dissolve, then it's haram. Because if it dissolves, it's most likely going to go down. It's most likely going to go down. Okay. So now, if there's a need to taste something, to put something in your mouth, to chew something, and then you taste it in your throat, right? The fuqaha say, as a starting point, they'd mention makruh, right? As we're going to mention it here. That's why I'm not mentioning the other opinion of not being makruh. We're going to come to it just now when we read the book. But I'm just explaining to it in detail first. So when we read this, it's very fast. Okay, so now they say it's makruh. So why do they say it's makruh? Because then they can put a stop to it. We said it's makruh. So then if you taste it here, then they say it breaks the fast. They say it breaks the fast, even if there's a need. Other fuqaha, they do not specify. They say it's makruh to taste food. That's it. Others say it's makruh to taste food unless there's a need. So even those who say unless there's a need, if you taste it, you break the fast, right? According to the madhab, we're going to mention the second opinion. And others say we do not say it's makruh. Why? Because others say we do not say if there's a need. Because if there's a need, makruh goes. So if you taste it here in your throat, then we should say it does not break the fast. Because we're going to say makruh goes if there's a need. Okay, so that would be, the first opinion is that it would break the fast. The second one that they indicate to is that it would not break the fast if there's a need. But in Al-Insaf, Al-Mardawi says that if a person, there's a need, and he tastes food, and then he tastes it here, what he should do is that he should try and spit it out. He should try and gargle or spit it out as much as he can. Thereafter, if he's done that, and then he still tastes something here, then his fast will not be broken. His fast will be valid, because he's tried his best to take it out. Okay, then the second thing they mention is to chew something. They mention, we're going to read it here, ilk. Ilk is like mastic, something that you chew. When you chew it, it doesn't dissolve, but it becomes harder. So there's two opinions in the madhab. The one says it's makruh to do it, and the madhab is that it's makruh to do it. And therefore, if you taste it in your mouth, in your throat, there's two opinions. Some say it would break, and others say it would not break. The madhab is that it would break the fast. Then the third thing they mention is to chew something that dissolves. So like a sweet, or like bubble gum, to chew it will dissolve. They say this is haram, because most likely it will go down. So something to dissolve, haram. Right? And if you taste it, it breaks the fast. The other one, that you chew, it goes harder. This should not be done unless there's, for some reason, a need. For some reason, there's a need. Right? It should not be done. If there's a need, then maybe we can go, as we said earlier. If there's a need, then either try and gargle it out, and then it's okay, or it would not break the fast. And if there's no need then to taste it, then there's the madhab that says it breaks the fast. That's then a strong opinion. And the other thing, the thing that to taste, where you need to taste like food, or to buy, or for a child, we mentioned those two, and a hint of a third opinion there. Okay, so now basically what I've said there, it actually summarizes everything in here. So we're not going to reread it, because it's basically, I'm looking at it now, we've covered it up. So one other thing they say is that, I forgot to say the thing, if to put something in your mouth that has no taste, like you just put a string in your mouth, you just want to bite on it. They say this is not makruh. It's not even makruh, because if you swallow that has no taste, it'll break the fast, because of what we said last time. But would it be makruh? It would not be makruh. It would not be makruh to do that. And it's because it has no taste. So we shouldn't have to discuss the matter of tasting it here, because it has no taste, right? If it has taste, then we kind of hinted at the masail. The trend of the madhab is that it will break the fast, right? So connected to this is like a wet miswaak. They said dry miswaak is permissible, right? A wet miswaak, we're not going to discuss the times of siwak, right? But just the ruling on it. A wet miswaak or a toothbrush, using toothbrush and toothpaste. So this, many of the fuqaha say it falls under something that dissolves. It falls under something that dissolves. In saying that, many of the fatawa of the mashayikh, right? Many of the fatawa of the mashayikh, including from Indo-Pak, when they mention when there's a reason. But the fuqaha say, the ulama say, it's permissible. It's permissible. And we could start, as a starting point, we said putting something in your mouth does not break the fast. So merely putting toothpaste here and brushing your teeth would not break the fast. But the issue is because it is dissolvable, or the wet miswak has a taste, especially if it's a taste that has been added onto it. A taste that has been added onto it, then here there's lots of risk. So a person should try and avoid it, number one, or only do it when it's necessary. When it's necessary, he's going to meet people or whatever he needs, or he's at work and things, then he should then he can do it. But he should be careful. Be careful, maybe try and only brush the front of the mouth, or maybe tilt the head as you do it, so that there's less chance if you just go down the throat. Now if it goes down the throat, same rules apply. If it was done consciously, then the fast would break. If it just happened to go down, without one realizing, it goes down or he gets the taste, then it will not break the fast, right? But again, you'd get the taste, and Imam Shawkani says, if you get a taste in your throat, it indicates that some part of the thing remains, whatever it may be, it will remain. So therefore, a person should be very careful. He can use it. It's the fatwa of the mashayikh, especially if there's a need. So he should avoid, and if there's a need, he does it. If he can do it before suhoor ends, he should do it. Otherwise, he can do it when he gets up in the morning or whatever. But be very careful if he does it. A miswaak, if you're using a miswaak and those bristles break off, the same rules applies. If you swallow it, you break the fast. But swallow it and you can distinguish it from your spit. If not, and you swallowed it, it does not break the fast. Okay, the next mas'ala they speak of is, they say it's makrooh to leave food particles in your mouth. Okay, it's makrooh to do that because you could swallow it. It comes to your mouth, then you swallow it, or it could lead to a person swallowing it. But if it's not, we said last time, if there's something in your mouth that you're not able to take out, and then you swallow it, it will not break the fast, right? Because we said it's like a person who's coerced, is forced to do it. And we say the qa'idah is al-mukrah la, they say la fi'la lah, something like that. That the person who's coerced, or the action he does, it's not actually as if it's his own action. And then they say it's makrooh to smell something, because it might have a physical body in it, and we touched on that mas'ala last time and in detail with the different madhahib. Then they speak وَتُكْرَهَ الْقُبْلَةِ. They say it's makruh for a person to kiss somebody, let's say specifically a spouse in this case. So they say a person kissing or hugging, etc. Anything that would fall into foreplay takes this rule, right? If it's out of compassion, let's say as a kiss out of compassion, no problem. If it's a kiss where a person is almost certain, or highly likely, or certain, or there's a very good chance that it will lead to a person releasing mani or madhi according to the madhab, or it would lead to intercourse, then it's haram. It's haram. If a person thinks that there's a slight chance, there's a small 30% chance that it might cause a person's desires to, just like it might arouse the person. Arousal haram. Causing many haram. Causing more than that haram. But it might cause an arousal, then it's makruh. It's makruh to do so. Okay, and the evidence for the permissibility of kissing is the fact that Aisha radiallahu anha says Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to kiss while he was fasting. وَكَانَ أَمْلَكُكُمْ لِإِرْبِهِ. And he was, you can say irbihi, you can say irabihi, with kasra and with fatha. He was the most controlling of his desires. So some of them say irbihi is referring to the body part that you fulfill your desires with, and irabihi is a person's desires. And some of the narrations say that Aisha radiallahu anha used to say كَانَ يُقَبِّلْ بَعْضَ نِسَائِهِ ثُمَّ تَضْحَكْ. Aisha radiallahu anha says Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to kiss some of his wives, but then she used to giggle radiallahu anha. And then the fuqaha say that it's يجب مطلقا, that a person in all of his life should avoid lying, backbiting, carrying tales, using bad, foul language and things like that. And they say in Ramadan, it is more important that a person avoids those things. And they say that that is because in blessed times, rewards are more. But they also say sin is more. And they differ whether sin is more as in the severity of the punishment or the number. Because Allah says, وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِسَيِّئَةٍ فَلَا يُجْزَى إِلَّا مِثْلَهَا. Whoever comes with a evil deed, he will only be recompensed with the like of it, not more. So it's a mas'ala that the Hanbali fuqaha touch in the chapter of Hajj. Maybe we mention it another time what they say there. So basically they say that you should avoid this. You should avoid these things in your life, and specifically in Ramadan, and specifically when you are fasting. Specifically when you are fasting, and that's when they say what? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعْ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَالْعَمَلَ بِهِ, in one narration, وَالْجَهْلَ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فِي أَنْ يَدَعْ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. So in Ibn Majah it says والجهل. So من لم يدع قول الزور, whoever does not avoid قول الزور. Zur is anything that is not the truth. So any form of lies, or something that's not the truth, any fabrication thing, it would fall under zur. That's why Allah says, Allah described zihar as قول الزور. That is munkara wa zura. It's something totally far-fetched, and it's zur, it's against the truth, it's far-fetched. And zihar is when you say to your wife or your sister that you say to your wife that you are haram on me, like my mother is haram on me, or the back of my mother, or a body part of my mother, or my sister, your maharim, who you're not allowed to sleep with. You say to your wife, she's like that. And that is called zihar. So one of the worst things of zur, qawl az-zur, is to make something halal haram. It's one of the worst of qawl az-zur. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, وَالْعَمَلَ بِهِ. So zur, this thing could be something to say or something to do. وَالْجَهْلَ, in Ibn Majah it says jahl. Jahl is referred to here as dhulm. Dhulm is referred to as jahl. So dhulm is oppressing. Then the hadith says, فَلَيْسَ لَا حَاجَةٌ أَنْ يَدَعْ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. And Allah has no need for this person to leave his food and drink for Allah's sake. There's no need, because you're not doing right to your fast. Because you kind of crushing it. So here we're going to mention an important mas'ala. When a person does a fardh action, there's two things connected to it. Number one, there's a reward a person gets for it. And number two, these things are intertwined. The sin of not doing it gets uplifted. So what does that mean? That means these two things go together. A person performs salah, he'll get reward, and the sin of not doing it is lifted. So when we say certain things like what? Like this hadith, where Allah has no need for your fasting, because you've backbitten and you've carried tales, you've lied, so your reward's gone less. Or Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said a person could perform salah and he only gets a portion of the salah, or a portion of reward of the salah, a tenth or a ninth or an eighth, or no reward at all. Or a person who drinks, then his salah is not accepted for 40 days. What does that mean? Does that mean a person does not need to perform salah or does not need to fast? No, the answer is that two things to it. He doesn't get the reward, but the sin of not doing it is lifted. So that person who drank, he should still perform salah. He won't get the reward, but the sin of not doing it gets lifted. If he does not pray the salah, for sure he's not getting the reward, but the sin of not doing it is still going to be on his back. And then the fuqaha say, Imam Ahmad, as he says, backbiting firstly does not break the fast. Imam Ahmad said if backbiting broke the fast, none of us would have a valid fast. And the fuqaha mention a few instances when backbiting is permissible. So a few of the ulama have mentioned it in a couple of lines of poetry, but in summary they mention a few things, and that is that it's permissible to backbite when there's a need for a fatwa and you need to mention a person's name, or there's dhulm happening and you need to remove the dhulm, you need to mention the person's name, permissible. Number three, if there's some reason to mention the person's name, say a ta'rif to whatever the situation is, and then you need to mention his name, permissible. Number four, you need help to remove munkar, to remove the evil, and in doing so you need to mention that person's name, who you need, who's the person's help to stop that person doing the evil, you can mention the name. So these are a few instances they say it's permissible to backbite. And then they mention some sunan of fasting. They say وَسُنَّ لَهُ كَثْرَةُ قِرَاءَةٍ وَذِكْرٍ وَصَدَقَةٍ. That it's sunnah for a person to engage in a lot of reciting of the Quran and dhikr and charity. Okay, so a bit later or next time inshallah we'll speak on a mas'ala of what actions to do at a blessed time. But in summary, the fuqaha say that if a time is blessed, it doesn't mean, if a time is blessed, the best thing to do in that time is what has been narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Sahaba to do in that time. That's the best thing to do. That's the best thing to do in that time. Why? Because, for example, we are prohibited from specifying the night of Friday or the day of Friday for night prayer, qiyamul layl, tahajjud, or fasting on the day. Despite it being the best day of the week and the best night of the week, we'll discuss that later, whether it is or not. There's a difference of opinion. So that means that if a time is blessed, does it mean, for example, let's say it's Ramadan. The best thing to do in Ramadan is a few things, like what? Reciting the Quran, i'tikaf, dua, feeding people. So does that mean, let's say, going to the graveyard, for example? That's virtuous. And it's more virtuous in a blessed time. But do you recite Quran or go to the graveyard? That's the point. You recite Quran, should you busy yourself reciting the Quran or going to the graveyard? You have 10 minutes. Either you read Quran or you go to the graveyard in Ramadan. What do? You do what's been narrated, Quran. You can do visiting the graveyard another time. But in this 10 minutes, what do? You recite the Quran. That would be better. Yes, visiting the graveyard would be better than something else. Let's say you're not going to do and you're going to relax. So either you go to the graveyard or you relax. Yes, graveyard's better. But when you have the choice, what do? After Asr is the best time of the day. The best thing to do is dhikr. Dhikr is the best thing, the evening adhkar and things like that. So if the time is blessed, it doesn't mean you do any action or every action. The best thing to do. Every action is blessed, but the best thing to do is what is being narrated. So in the month of Ramadan, these things are there. Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi used to leave the gatherings of knowledge, the gatherings of the hadith, Ahlul Hadith, and used to recite the Quran. Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi used to read 60 khatma of the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Yes, the fuqaha say you should not read it in less than 3 days, but they make an exception for blessed times and blessed places. So in Ramadan, it's an exception to the rule. In Mecca, exception to the rule, etc. So then they say وَكَفُّ لِسَانِهِ عَمَّا يُكْرَهُ, and that they say it is sunnah for a person to not speak of things that are makrooh. So they're not sinful. Sinful, we touched on it, but they better to be avoided. They say it's better for a person. It's sunnah for a person to avoid these things. Obviously, any time in his life, but more so in Ramadan. And then they say if a person is spoken to badly, is sworn at, or somebody is harsh to him, and then in order to repel that, he shouldn't be harsh back, but he should try and repel the person by telling him, I am fasting. So that's what he should do. And Ibn Taymiyyah says he should verbalize it loudly, whether it's sunnah or whether it's nafil, sunnah or fardh fast. The other opinion is that if it's in a fardh fast, then you vocalize it. And if it's not, then you say to yourself in your mind. The reason for that is they say because in nafil action, especially fasting, no one knows of it except Allah. So if you're vocalizing it, you're basically telling the person that you're basically indicating, I'm fasting. So that's why the second opinion is that you don't say it in nafil fast. And Ibn Taymiyyah says the hadith just says it. فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. Let him just say it. So that means fast, nafil or fardh fasting all together. Okay. Then they say وَسُنَّ تَأْخِيرُ سُحُورٍ إِن لَمْ يَخْشَعْ طُلُوعَ فَجْرٍ ثَانِي. They say now when we come to the masail, let's touch on masail of suhoor. Masail on suhoor and then iftar. Let's try and finish these masail. Let's try and finish it. There's like a few minutes left for the dars, but let's try and go through it quickly because there's a few interesting masail. If you can reach the end of this chapter tonight, that will be excellent. So let me try and go through it a bit faster. So they say for suhoor, it's sunnah to delay suhoor. It's sunnah to delay suhoor. So you delay suhoor until when? Here Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu says we should delay suhoor in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to the extent where, and then after that we'd go and perform salah. So it would be so late, we'd have suhoor, that we'd then go and perform fajr salah. So the narrators asked him, how late? The narrator asked him, what was the difference between your suhoor, the time difference, and your salah? So he said, amount of reading around 50 ayat. So that's why it's around 7 to 8 minutes, or 8 to 10 minutes, around there, a person could say approximately. So if the time of Fajr comes in 5 o'clock, then around 10 to 5 to be sunnah for a person to not eat. It's a sunnah for a person to stop eating. And they say it's sunnah for a person to stop eating based on that. And a couple other things they mention is, we say that suhoor in Arabic language, it would be what is eaten after half the night. And some of the fuqaha of the madhab specify that the first time for suhoor is after half the night. In this case, you'd count from when half the night. I said in the first lesson, or one of the lessons, the day and night timings would differ according to masail. In this case, it would be from Maghrib, sunset, to suhoor, when Fajr comes in. When Fajr comes in, you count the hours, break it in half. That part then would be suhoor. What amount of eating or drinking would count as suhoor? The fuqaha say, even if it's a sip of water, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, hadith of Abu Sa'id in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, وَلَوْ أَنْ يَجْرَعَ أَحَدُكُمْ جَرْعَةً مِّن مَّاءٍ. Even if you were to just take a sip of water. But Ibn Taymiyyah says, if a person is able to eat, then the sunnah would be for him to eat. And they say a complete suhoor, the complete reward for suhoor would be through eating, because Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhu says, بيننا وبينهم أكلة السحور. That the difference between our fast and the fast of non-Muslims would be eating of suhoor. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, النعمة سحور المؤمن التمر. That the best, what an amazing suhoor for a Muslim is dates. So and they say it's by consensus, bil-ijma', it's not wajib to have suhoor. And then they say, وَكُرِهَ جِمَاعٌ مَعَ شَكٍّ فِي طُلُوعِ الْفَجْرِ. They say it's makruh to have intercourse when a person doubts the Fajr is coming in. And we spoke on last time, when there's doubt of Fajr coming in, or there's most likely, or there's certainty. So this we count as doubt, because we said the starting point is the night continues, so therefore it would be makruh. Why? Two things. One, a person is on the borderline of maybe he has intercourse when the time of suhoor ends, therefore it would mean kaffarah. Number two, a person gains no benefit from strength to his body from intercourse, and that is not like food and drink. That's why if a person doubts whether Fajr has come in and he's eating or drinking, then in this case he can continue eating and drinking until he is certain. To the extent that what some of the Sahaba have said, if you tell two people who know how to deduce when Fajr would start, two of them to say, tell me when Fajr starts, and they differ, one says it's come in, the other says not yet, you can eat until both of them agree. Then connected to this is a mas'ala of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that إذا سمع أحدكم النداء والإناء على يده فلا يدعه حتى يقضي حاجته. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, if one of you is eating or drinking, if one of you is drinking, the cup in his hand or the morsels in his mouth, and he hears the adhan of Fajr, then he should not put his cup down or not spit out his food until he's taken his fill from it, he's taken his food, he's taken his need from it. So this hadith, how do we understand? Does it mean if the time has come in 5 o'clock and you chewing, you carry on? Or does it mean you hear the adhan, you continue eating? The ulama say, and this is a number of ulama say so. Let's use what Bayhaqi said. Bayhaqi first said that this hadith is questionable on the authenticity. So if it's not authentic, then we don't apply it. And the ayat says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Basically the ayah says, eat and drink until you show that Fajr has come in, then finish. Here, even if the adhan is happening, and Fajr has come in, the hadith actually indicates you can continue. But the ayah says don't. So if it's weak, it's no rule to it. The other one is that we deduce from other riwayat, in al-Hakim and stuff, إذا بزغ, and other riwayat, that this adhan that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is speaking about is the adhan that was given before Fajr came in. Therefore, if the Fajr has come in, either a person knows through his timetable or through the adhan of the mu'adhin, and he's got food in his mouth or drink, he has to spit it out because the time of Fajr has come in. So how do you understand that hadith? Like how I mentioned. Can you ask just now so I can just finish these couple of masail? Okay, then the ulama say imsak, part of the night. Imsak means to not eat. We mentioned imsak earlier. So is it wajib on a person to have imsak a part of the night? So if Fajr comes in 5 o'clock, he has to have imsak, let's say around 4:57. They say no, you're allowed to eat until 5. But in the books of usul, they say ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Something is wajib, which means not to eat when fajr comes in. Anything that would assist on that wajib becomes wajib. So to be certain you won't eat, you have to then fast a couple of minutes of the night. So in usul they mention it, in fiqh they don't mention it. And then one of the last things they say we can mention of suhoor is that the ulama say the barakah is in the food itself. The barakah is in the food itself and not specifically the time. But the barakah is in the food. And I think that's most of the masail of suhoor that they mention. The next thing they speak about is iftar, but there's a good few masail to mention here, and the time is up. So inshallah we'll do it next. Yeah, must I explain this mas'ala? I can explain it just like in a few seconds, but just a bit more detail. Okay, so the fuqaha say, we'll touch on it a bit more details. Possibly if you guys suggest after Ramadan, we continue with this mas'ala when you do qadha and the person dies, how do you do with the remaining fasts? That basically the fuqaha say, if an ibadah has to do with a person's body, like salah, like fasting, then there's no one can do that ibadah on behalf of him. No one can do that ibadah on behalf of him. So a person missed salah and he passed away, you can't perform the salah that he missed. The person missed fasting, according to the majority of the ulama, some ulama differ based on the hadith, we'll mention it later, is that you cannot fast on his behalf, not his qadha, not his kaffarah. And because these are connected to the body. The second category is those ibadat that are connected to wealth, you can do on behalf of somebody else, connected to wealth. So you can give charity on behalf of somebody else, whether they're dead or they are alive, The last category is a category of ibadah that is connected to money and your body. That is hajj. Hajj is your body doing the ibadat, but you need money to go for hajj. وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. That hajj is obligatory on a person who can afford to do hajj and can reach Bayt al-Haram. So therefore this one is connected to body and money. Hence ulama give permissibility of hajj because of body and money and the ahadith in this regard. So therefore that's why hajj would be permissible, or dua or charity, etc. But qadha of fasting or qadha of salah would not be permissible, and Allah knows best.